and he will be followed by Mr. Jim Knight. Mr. Fisher, you're recognized.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I want to first begin by reminding everybody that today is the 79th anniversary of D-Day. So I always say honor those few that still walk amongst us and memorialize them when they're gone. I live in Escondido, which is in the southwest district of Boca Raton, District 5. And I've been before you to talk about a serious concern of ours down there, which is the S-turn stretch of Lyons Road just south of Glades Road. As I spoke before you the last time I was here, I told you the day before there was a crash in that intersection. Today I'm here to tell you that 3 days ago there was another crash. So I also told you every time there's a crash in that intersection, you're going to see my smiling face coming up here. So what do I have new to share with you? The last commission meeting, it was stated that FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation, was invited down with their engineers to do an inspection of the roadway. We did meet with them. We met with them over at FAU, but that meeting was primarily for a meeting with the engineering students of FAU. Lyons Road was touched on lightly, briefly, but really there was nothing done after that, and it was said that there was an inspection done, but I sincerely doubt that there ever was one done because we've never seen a report. So there's that. 3 days ago, there was a crash. Also, I want to tell you today, if you were to go to Lyons Road and Glades Road at the corner, the intersection there is a blind pedestrian sign mangled. The pole that the sign sits on is like something hit it hard. And it's been there for almost a month now, and it hasn't been addressed, and it doesn't seem like anybody's really keeping an eye on things. So there's that. The other thing I wanted to touch on too, one of the previous meetings that I've been at here, I heard staff say that their best idea of a fix would be to close the intersection down between the communities of Escondido and the Timbers. And that would basically force the residents from each community to either go north or go south and hang a U-turn and come back respectively. And that opens up a whole new discussion on doing U-turns in front of traffic that's going 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. So there's that. And what wrapped up, and this is what caught my ear, what wrapped up that conversation was that the two communities would have to agree to shut that intersection down. They would have to give the green light, no pun intended. And so, you know, where I find a problem with that logically is you're giving these two communities the decision. And if that's the best decision, that's the fix to make this safer, you're discounting or cutting out the thousands of other motorists from other communities, other towns, other counties, other states that use that stretch of roadway. They have no say in the matter. It's just these two communities. So it kind of gives me the impression that staff's a little bit out of touch with reality, if that's their version of the best fix. So my overall impression here, this has been going on for quite a while now. We've been back and forth with our commissioner. We've been back and forth with staff, meetings, Zoom meetings. We've been asked for letters. We've given letters. We've been asked for petitions. We've given petitions, and just long periods of silence in between, and nothing's really getting done.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Just one thing. There seems to be a serious disconnect between staff and the commission and we the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knight and, Commissioner Sachs would like to speak to you.
No, it's okay. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. You can sit down. It's okay. Thank you, sir. You can sit down. Thank you. I want to thank you. Well, you can stand up and stay there. I want to thank you for your concern for traffic safety. It is a very important thing for all of us. It's our number one concern in our roadways is traffic and safety. So I want to thank you for your interest. And for this reason, Mayor, if I may, I have requested that David Ricks, head of engineering, come and give us a response to Mr. Fisher with regard to the issues of traffic safety at that area. And folks, we are dealing with Lyons Road. There is a curve that goes in front of two communities, Escondido and Timbers. So I wonder, with your permission, Mr. Mayor, if we could have David Ricks speak in response to Mr. Fisher. Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and Mayor. Just a few comments in terms of Escondido and Lions Way. The gentleman is correct that there was a DOT project. That project was $3.5 million. It was done from Lions Road from Norte Lago to Pine Springs, 2016, 2018. They did a temporary signal during the construction, then they took it out after the road was completed. And it was done through a safety grant. And the crash data before the grant, 2012, 2015, is about 22 crashes. Then after the project completed, 3 years after, about 9 crashes. And then a 9-month period ending last September, about 4 crashes. And we've done several things outside that project that the county has done, in addition to what the state project has done. We've done hidden driving warning signs with street names, with yellow flashing lights, starting on Lions Road, approaching Escondido Way. We've done curved warning signs, reflective tape on the posts that were installed on Lions Road, approaching the road. And then we put larger chevron signs that were installed along the curve on Lions Road. And we've done speed limit signs that were all added approaching the curb on both sides. Speed definitely is a challenge on that road, about 40 miles an hour. And the request is for its signal. It does not, regulations prohibit traffic signals if they don't meet traffic standards. But one of the things that we are going to do immediately, we talk with the district commissioner, is that we're going to put these called raised pavement markings. Basically, it's approaching the curve, throughout the curve. What that would do, basically, it indicate to the driver if they're going past a certain rate of speed, that they will, they'll feel it, the sensation in the car, and they'll have to slow down. So we'll install that as soon as we can to do that, and other enhancements for driver safety.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask him a couple of questions? Thank you. Mr. Ricks, how many items have we put on that roadway to slow folks down?
Well, we're just looking at the list here. We've done almost 5 or 6 different separate items that we've done.
Have we put a flashing light that gives an indication of your speed limit?
We have not done that yet. We have not done that. But we've done basically the chevron sign. As you come into the curve, you'll see basically the yellow sign with the black letterings as you're going through the curve, multiple of those as you're going.
But how many chevron signs are there that indicates that there is a curve there?
Approaching on both sides, about 5 or 6 on both sides as you're going on both sides of that location.
What is the speed limit for that area?
40 miles an hour.
If and you're an engineer, you've got a stellar background, but in your experience as a traffic engineer, if someone was doing the speed limit, would there be a safety issue, or would they be able to navigate that curve safely?
If they were doing the speed limit, they should be able to navigate that curve safely.
And what else has the county done to slow vehicles down on that roadway?
We did the curve warning signs. We put a flashing, sign as you're approaching that intersection on both sides.
So there's a flashing yellow light that
Right.
goes on to slow folks down, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And have you visited that area yourself, made a personal
Multiple
site?
times.
Multiple times. Have you been in touch with the residents who complain about the safety of that curve at both Timbers and at the other HOA?
I have not, but my staff has,
Okay. How many times? More than once?
more than once.
And what are we going to do now? Well, let me ask you something. Can we put an intersection light there at the curve?
Like I said earlier, federal regulations prohibit that if it doesn't meet traffic standards.
Okay, so because of federal regulations, the county is not allowed to put an intersection light at that same spot that Mr. Fisher is complaining about.
That is correct.
So what are we going to do? What is the county going to do about slowing people down going around that curve?
We're going to put these called raised pavement markings. These like little bumps on the road.
Is that what you see, like if you're on the Turnpike or I-95 and your car begins to veer off of the roadway?
That is correct.
Okay.
And they have reflective indicators on it, so as you, especially at night, it'll reflect the light of the headlights back into the driver, so they give them indication that they should be slowing down on that. But also the sensation that you're off the hard surface, you'll feel that, just like if you're on an interstate or a turnpike.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I have
Thank
no
you.
further questions.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Knight, followed by Mr. Mulvihill.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Jim Knight, 740 Havana Drive, Boca Raton, Florida. I would like to comment on the April 27th, 2023 code presentation. I was not able to attend in person, but I tuned in from Asheville, North Carolina. My wife thinks I'm a nut job. I probably am. It's just a fact. I mean, the fact that I'm on vacation. Fortunately, it was raining, so I could use that excuse. Anyhow, the presentation was very informative. Code enforcement response times have significantly improved, which is important. The public safety and health are critical, as shown in many of the slides. We saw the dirty pools, we saw the trash piled up, the fences falling down, all kinds of stuff. Let me lost my spot here. I believe there can be some improvement, however, how compliance is handled. And in addition, I believe some codes have changed as it relates to right to farm. A comment was made by Palm Beach County staff about hiring Katie Edwards Walpole and right to farm. The comment was something to the effect that Palm Beach County made changes to land development regulations not to constrain commercial ag operations for fences, setbacks, and building permits if legit, quote-unquote, ag operations exist. The Mulvihills, who I represent, they're operating still on their property. They were before you, I believe, on the 25th of May. An ag operation, they have all the code, meet all the rights under the right to farm and so forth. And they've been going through a process to try to get a fence permitted that was put up in 1970, many, many years before they were ever there. And some additional stuff that I believe fell under the Right to Farm Act, but I'm not an expert on that. But I do feel that I'm an expert on some of the codes here in the county, as I've volunteered for 20 plus years on LDRAB and LDRC, which is your code division board. So I'm hopeful that in the coming years here and soon, or on some other properties, because I represent a number of the people that are farming under the Right to Farm Act and the Ag Reserve, that we can clarify some of the items in the code. And I think some of it's already been done, but it seems like some of it's being hit more like the guys that got the pool that's full of all kinds of junk and the trash piled up and so forth. And I thank you all for your time, and hopefully I did a little better than the Panthers did last night.
That hurt. You were good until you did that. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. Joe Mulvihill, 9821 Happy Hollow Road, Delray Beach, Florida. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your vote the other day. And so now we're trying to get closed on our property. Well, about my story with code violation is about 18 months ago, my neighbor was getting hassled, Eric over at US Lawn. So I guess the supervisor came out and she came into my property and wanted to know what was going on with what's all this construction debris laying around and why my 6-foot fence part of it's torn down or laying down a little bit. And I told her, well, Bender cleaned the ditch a few weeks ago and piled some dirt up and blah, blah, blah. So I ended up fixing that. And then the construction debris was just a bunch of blocks that we use for either holding up plants from blowing over or cinder blocks for building benches. And I had a lot of them on pallets piled around the perimeter of my property. And anyway, I showed her around. And then about 5 months later, I get a letter from code enforcement which had 11 violations on one of my parcels and 2 or 3 on another parcel. Excuse me. So I spent a lot of money cleaning up. I tore down, or I had somebody come cut down a big yellow semi that was sitting there just for a storage trailer. So Judy Hill, my neighbor, didn't see it anymore, which you saw up on screen. You know, and if Mayor Sachs ever drives up 441, it looks a lot nicer now than it did a year ago. You know, I put in probably a $4,000 Auriga palm hedge so you didn't see some semi-storage trailers that I have that hold winter plastic and winter covering in it. But my other violations were, you know, my office trailer that's been there since 2005. You know, they wanted a permit on that and a flood plan study. And, you know, the other one's about a burn pile on my back, which nobody can see. And, you know, they want me to cover up my boat. That's a 25-foot boat that's about 500 feet from 441, and you can't even see it. They don't want to see any of my equipment from 441, so they wanted me to screen all that off. Excuse me. So, anyway, the only 2 things that are lingering now is the fence, and what ended up happening was we were going to go see a special magistrate, and the code enforcement officer said, don't bother coming, you know, we'll give you an extension, blah, blah, blah. All you have to do to make your fence legal is to take the barbed wire down. So I take the barbed wire down, call him out, and he says, anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Melissa McEwen and Shira Menser.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Melissa McEwen, 1270 Southeast 14th Court, Deerfield. Just to pick up where my uncle left off, anyway, he took the barbed wire off the fence, and code enforcement came out and said, actually, the agreed order says you need to permit the fence. So I stepped in and decided to help my uncle sort these code enforcements now that we had an agreed order and 2 things outstanding with code enforcement to fix. As you heard, they're hindering the title of the company, so we needed to get them cleared up. I spoke with an expediter to understand a little bit about the process, and she's like, if you have any time constraint, you know, it's honestly easier to rip the fence out and tear your office down. And I was a bit appalled coming from an expediter that would be the easiest remedy here, would be to just remove everything. So I decided to take matters in my own hand and try to figure out what we needed to do. We had an agreed order. It said we needed to get permits, so I tried to call the permitting department. I got somewhere and spoke with somebody to help me understand what documents I needed to gather. I gathered those documents, and then sooner or later, when I got down to submitting applications, I got an email that pretty much, I just was going to quote what I received from staff. The division as a whole is processing, this is her quote from the email I received, 300 plus applications per day. Every time we have to stop and respond to these emails, it takes away from the time we can be reviewing. I have provided with very detailed information already to you in multiple emails. All this activity has taken quite a bit of time away from my ability to complete reviews of permits in process. The review of your applications will be delayed as well because I have dozens of other customers that send just as many emails with the same types of questions, comments, requests for meetings, walk-in visits, phone calls. It's all very time-consuming. And I still didn't have my answers, but I decided to leave her alone and see how else I could get help. I just wanted to just state that it's an issue, you know, to receive code enforcement violations and have absolutely no idea where to start. The departments, it's like departmental between getting your zoning approval letter, verifying that you're bona fide ag is the zoning department. Then you have code enforcement department, and then you have the permitting department. And there's just so many little glitches and steps that you need to take, and it's quite daunting and confusing for, I guess, an everyday individual to figure this out and not get calls back and receive help just from the county. So I just wanted to just make it apparent. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxter, then Vice Mayor Sachs.
Thank you for that. More so for the record, so my fellow commissioners know this is something I've been really looking into. I'm very concerned because the Right to Farm Act, the only provision the state has given us to enforce anything on bona fide ag is through a floodplain review process, which I feel is very important in Florida. Flooding is a big issue. I guess where this becomes concerning to me is that we're holding this to barbed wire fences. And we're holding this to non-residential farm buildings that have been there for decades. And I find this as a backhanded way to try to start requiring a permit without requiring a permit. Because we are requiring a floodplain review to include fencing and non-residential structures in it. So legally, I would like to ask staff to look into if we're complying with the law and make sure that this was the intended outcome of what our state legislature had intended for the Right to Farm Act. And as it relates to their property, it's very unique because code enforcement had given them fines following policy, so I'm not saying one way or the other that. But what really struck me is they tried to come into compliance and couldn't do it as an owner-builder. Again, state law says there's only certain exemptions that allow you as an owner-builder to go to apply as an owner-builder. I guess my problem is that the application itself was required, and saying that they have to go through all this for a fence and a non-residential structure under the right to farm on a bona fide. You don't get any more bona fide ag than the Mulva Hills. They're truly a farm. So this I find very concerning. Where does it start? Where does it stop? And I've asked and had meetings with some staff and have asked for processes so it's not this difficult. We need a pathway forward for our residents that spells it out in as clear as possible. These are steps 1 through however many, but I would ask that we also take a look at if they're coming into a problem owner builder, and the reason the owner builder is a problem for them is because they're trying to sell. We just approved the building down there. So it's all getting knocked down in 6 months anyways, and they're still having problems. It struck me as unnecessarily burdensome. So I would just like to, without objection, give staff to look into these things and see if my fellow commissioners had any comments of their own.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I think code enforcement does the best it can within certain parameters. But now the Gold Coast, or what do they say, the gold pole have to be moved. We have different situations that present itself in our county, especially in Ag Reserve and in unincorporated. And I think what we need to do, I know what we need to do, and Ms. Baker, I'm going to refer to your advice. We need to really have our staff revisit some of the codes with regard to what has developed in our communities, in our county. We have rural enclaves that are becoming just sort of dumping places for all kinds of different functions in conflict with residential folks. And we have farmers who are needing to grow and or needing to compress their property lines and are having difficulty abiding by our code. We also have a new law that probably will take effect on July 1st. So I wonder if we could, with your advice, Baker, have our enforcers take a look at the present status of the code. Then, secondly, how do we make that more consumer friendly? We may need to buy a new app for consumers, but Ms. Baker, and I know Mr. Rutter, who's here, the three of us, been working on these issues with folks wanting to come down to our area, invest money, fix up old places, and be able to do a good business there. And it's all over the county. So I agree with my fellow Commissioner Baxter, but I would like to see it in a way that we give our staff ample opportunity and time and resources to review the code as it is today in relation to two things. One, the changing landscape of our county. And secondly, with regard to the new law that will be coming into place. Then let's talk about making it more consumer-friendly, because frankly, folks are not knowing how to proceed. And rather than going through all these little incidents, maybe we can make it friendlier to everybody who are residents of the county and those who want to become residents. I think it's time that we brought it to the 21st century and helped our code enforcers and certainly made it easier for people to access. I'm asking for your advice.
Mayor,
Go right ahead.
staff has been looking at our code and reviewing it. We will be having code changes. Commissioner Baxter has asked for a workshop on agritourism that will have a significant change. And as you well stated, and especially in the Ag Reserve area, for many, many years, we have been constantly making, those changes. And I call it a death by 1,000 cuts, because we have made some drastic changes. We've changed land use, and I know that the Mulvihill Hills have definitely been a part of those changes, going from just ag to other land use changes. And so we will continue to look at those processes, and we will be bringing them back to the board. I stated earlier today that I will work with ISS on, and I talked to Commissioner Baxter on this. She brought it up. And I asked the IT director to set up a meeting so we can get some input from Commissioner Baxter, but things are not as easy as they appear. We are changing, as you well know. We've changed and put more non-farming activities in these areas, and there is a conflict. There is definitely a conflict. And so we will continue to review the processes and bring recommended changes back to this board when it comes to making sure we're in compliance with the law as it relates to agriculture, tourism, and we have some of that in the county now. Prior board did make changes to the code to allow for it. And I can't think of the gentleman's name. I don't know how I can forget it. But he's on State Road 7, and so we did allow for a store in that area. They do ag tourism because they do activities that's associated with agriculture on that property, as well as grow on that property. That's correct. Bednar. And so this board has been open. We will continue to be open. We are in the process, and I'm looking at Patrick, as far as when we're going to bring some changes back. I know that Lisa Amari is looking at that, and she's proposing changes. The mayor brought that up last year, I want to say, on trying to reduce our code. Our code continues to grow because you can't write a rule that's going to cover everything. And so when we find when we have loopholes in the system, or vagueness, I should say, and people utilize it, then we want to close those loopholes, and so then it just continues to grow. But we are in the process, and Patrick, when do we think we'll be bringing some back to the board to discuss?
I don't have an exact date, but we'll get that. We'll inform the board of the initial phases. Zoning has been working on looking at a number of things based on the previous board direction. That's kind of in concert with the previous board direction as well, related to densities that we have. And a lot of these pieces all go together. So, and just one thing to be mindful of, certainly county administrator was addressing the changes we made in the ag reserve. Those all precipitate changes in the code. So when we always look at trying to thin out the code, we've added a lot as well. But we will get you an update on where we are with points. I know they've looked at a number of other ones. They've visited some other local governments to get some other ideas, and we will get you that update.
And we will be bringing back the ag tourism in September because of all the other things planning, zoning, and building has on its plate right now. So we'll be bringing that particular one back to the board in September.
Commissioner Baxter, then back to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just more specifically than just agritourism, I think this is a bigger part of the right to farm, but I would love for a breakdown of our floodplain review process, A to Z. Very, very specifically, because that is what seems to be the area of contention on a decent amount of things, and have them break it down for all of us so we can look at it ourselves and decide. And I just greatly appreciate that. And the information is always important. And you keep referencing something's going to change July 1 regards to this. Somebody said a new something passed. No? All right, just making sure. I was like, I didn't see anything in our legislative update that said that, so I wasn't sure what someone was referencing on that, but thank you anyways.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, we need, and I want to commend Patrick Rudder. We were working for a long time, especially Mr. Rudder, on issues of code enforcement, and we have gotten them rectified. But there's hundreds more like that of folks who have issues with regard to code enforcement. So I think in deference to our code officers, we need to revisit and study our codes so that we know exactly what I don't think we can make them smaller. I think we probably need to grow our codes because of all the different groups that are coming in and the conflicts and the people who are coming into our county. They need to know what they can do, what they can't do. And the people who have been here for many years are being pushed around by codes that probably were in effect in the 1960s. So if we can really put an effort into codifying our code, modernizing our code so that it meets the needs of our community. And then, as Commissioner Baxter said, let's take a look at it so that we can all measure it in terms of our communities ourselves. Thank you very much, Mr. Rudder. Thank you very much, Ms. Baker. I appreciate it.
Ms. Menser, you're now recognized. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Appreciate your patience.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm not as eloquent as everyone else here. This is my first time here. My name is Shira Menzer. I live in Timbers of Boca. Do I have to say my address? Or yeah, 21144 White Oak Avenue. I'm coming because of the traffic light. We had a meeting a few years ago regarding our concerns. I'm a mother. I have 3 small children. Every morning when I have to turn out of my development to make a left onto Lyons, it's terrifying. And every time they're in the car, I'm like, please don't get hit, please don't get hit. And I pray to God every single time I'm in the car with them and I'm doing that turn. Every time I'm turning into my development, making a right, I'm like, please don't smash into me, please don't smash into me, because there are cars right on my tail. And again, when my kids are in the car, it scares me. Besides for that, we have children that sit on that corner of our development waiting for their bus. And that's not my children yet, but it could be. My children could be sitting there waiting for a bus, and every day I'm fearful for those children sitting there, because what if a car is going too fast and just slips, knocks them out, God forbid. But that's what we live with Timbers and Escondido. I heard what was said. I'm not very thrilled about that, I'll be honest. I don't understand why it would be illegal if after the curve is where our developments are and there's a light just several feet down the road. We really do need a light. I'm just wondering how many accidents there need to be. I mean, within the past few years, we've had 14 accidents, and those are just the reported ones. We've had 2 fatalities, and those are, I mean, obviously the fatalities are reported, but how many people need to die before we get a light? How many days do I need to make that turn and be afraid that, God forbid, someone's gonna hit me? My kids are in the car. what if, I mean, they're still young now, but when they start driving, I have to live in fear every single day of them going in and out of our development. We have a wonderful development, we have wonderful people in there, but we really are in need of a traffic light. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, you recognize.
Excuse me, I wonder if I could get your name so I can, could you come back up to the podium, just your last name so I could address you?
Menzer.
Menzer, hi, Ms. Menzer. A couple of things. One is that I will give you the name of a federal engineer who works for our congressional delegation. If we can get the federal government to tell us that we can put a light there, then with county staff's permission, then we will have federal approval.
I could
The
be
federal
very
government-
annoying when I need to
I'm
be.
sorry.
I could be very annoying when I need to be. So please give me that name.
Absolutely, absolutely. That way you'll know who to talk to
Yes.
about putting in an intersection light there, because we have tried everything, and the state has tried. You know, I brought down the secretary, the Florida Department of Transportation, and he's the one who told me he didn't have authority to do it. The federal government does. Now, well, I'll give you the name of a federal engineer who works for one of our congressional staff. Second thing is, I will contact the school district and have that school bus pull in to your development, if it's legal for them, to pick up kids, so they're not sitting on a major thoroughway. My kids went on a school bus. That needs to be safe. If the school bus is sitting on a major thoroughway, like Lyons Road, it needs to pull into the development and pick up the kids. I made them do that in my development. I'm sure you and I will work on it so that it happens for your development. And the third thing is this. People love to speed on curves. And I said this before, because I used to prosecute these types of leaving the scene of an accident with fatalities and hit and runs. You cannot affect the mind of the driver. We can't do it. What we can do, and that's what David Ricks has talked about today, we can slow the vehicle down. And you may not like it, but I think you will. We're going to put little grids all around that curve so that the vehicle will slow. That's what we can do. Other than that, we can't affect people from driving drunk, texting and driving, speeding around curves. That's something we can't do, but we can slow the vehicle down, and we will. And the last thing I want to tell you is that it was said here that there was an accident with a motorcycle the other day. I think it was on Saturday, and I investigated that. And that wasn't an accident with a motorcycle. It was somebody dumped a motorcycle there that had been stolen, removed the license plate, and left. Police were there investigating that suspicious vehicle, which was the motorcycle, but it was not an accident. So I want you to sleep a little better knowing there wasn't not an accident with a motorcycle. It was somebody had left the motorcycle there and left. And that came from law enforcement, all right? So I'm a mother. I know what you went through, what you're going through, and I will try everything I can to help you have a little more peace for your children, for traffic safety. David Ricks has been working on this, but I think we have the solution. We're going to put grids on there. The vehicles will slow down so that you'll be able to have more traffic safety there. So at the end of this session, I'll meet you outside, and I'll make sure you get those names and contacts. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
All right, we don't have any other cards. There is no other business in front of this board. This meeting is adjourned.